Good Story Live. As you can see, it's a little different today. There's no Jesse. But that's okay. We're revisiting the early days of Good Story Live. Jesse has to travel this week. Regardless, we do have a fun episode planned for you today with a special guest who I will introduce in a moment. But first, let's go ahead and come into the intro, and I will check back in with you guys in just a few minutes. Again, welcome to this Thursday, November 10th. I can't believe it's already November. Episode of Good Story Live. So hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Good Story Live, a very special after hours episode of Good Story Live. So we are filming clearly in the evening because I'm with my husband Kevin, and it's best to do these sorts of things once children are in bed.
Very much so in our household. Yes.
So this is a special after hours. It's almost like a date night, if you will. We've got a couple of glasses of wine. We're going to ask some questions. We're going to play a game. This is very much bringing back, I mentioned this to you earlier, night in vibes.
Yes, night in vibes, early Norcross days vibes.
Yeah, well, I mean, even here, so night in, because none of you will know. But so for a while, actually the YouTube channel still exists, Adulting Done Right. Kevin and I used to do night in videos. We did a handful of them, I feel like, where we would cook dinner together, typically a new recipe. We would try something new. So we would film the process and then film us trying it. And it was kind of like an at-home date night.
Yeah, like reviewing what we made.
Yes, reviewing what we made. It was a lot of fun. If you guys are interested in that, let us know, and we'll go ahead and link to
link that in the show notes.
Yeah, link that in the show notes. They're very comical. You'll get you get glimpses of young Grayson, like infant Grayson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little bit more of a chunky monkey then.
Mm-hmm. But this is bringing back for sure night in vibes. So to let you know, today Jesse is traveling, and had a hectic schedule this week. So since he and Poe got on the other day, or maybe a few weeks ago, and shared a little bit about their story and their relationship, Kevin and I thought it would be fun to do the same. We are going to share a little bit about our relationship, how we met. We are parents of 2 kiddos, so we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But first, I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about Kevin. So Kevin is
oh wow, I didn't know you were preparing like that.
Oh me. Yeah, I prepared. I'm going to bring up my notes real quick so that way I can tell you a little bit about Mr. Kevin. So Kevin Dickman. So he manages the design and construction of new cold warehouse buildings as well as property redevelopment. Accurate?
Yes.
Accurate. When he's not busy ensuring that things are up to code. Oh, I love this. He enjoys spending time with myself and our 2 kiddos, Grayson and Clara, who you all have now met. He also is he loves movies, enjoys the occasional video game.
Yep.
And learning new skills.
Of course. And like in the process of that, kind of like right now.
Yeah. You Did I do a good job of your bio?
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
She totally did not prep me for any of that, so it was a little bit of a shock.
He did not know he was going to have a bio read about him. But this is Mr. Kevin Dickman. We are going to, like I said, answer a couple of questions. But before we hop into the questions, I think it would be fun to play a game very related to Good Story Live.
Okay.
He has I don't know if I told you what this game was, did I?
No.
Oh, so I'm super excited. So the game, I'm sure if you're familiar, if you're on TikTok or on Instagram or or if you're familiar with games like Scattergories, right? They have the filters now where if you get a random letter generated And then you're given a list of categories, and you have to essentially sound off something from each category, beginning with the random letter that was generated.
Okay. We'll see where this goes.
So being that Good Story Live is the show for creatives. Where should I put, actually? This is wonderful. I feel like I'm gonna have to write this down for us. This I was not prepared for. Actually, I could just give you the phone. That's fine. So the categories are, for the randomly generated letter of the alphabet, are author. We have to give an author, fictional character, movie, book, song, musician, an actor/actress.
Okay.
I am going to. Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Can I see the list, or am I have to commit that to memory?
No. You'll have the list when it's your turn. So you can either go first. I'm going to generate the letter of the alphabet now. Bring up the random generator. Done. If I can find it. And then, here we go. Oh no. This is what happens when you use free tools. They generate all kinds of, here we go.
This might be challenging. So it'll be a random letter, and then I've got to think of an author based off the random letter. Ooh.
Okay. Yes. Here, actually, I'm going to bring it up here. Random letter. Picker. Perfect. Here we go. So would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first based on this is your time doing this?
You should probably go first.
Okay, I'll go first. So generate random letter. My letter is R. Do you see that my letter is R?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Ginger's random letter is R. An author that starts with R. I want to say Ronald Dahl, right? I feel like that's an author of, like, whoever is the author of The Big Friendly Giant.
Do we switch in between?
Nope. Okay. I'm going fully down the list. I'm committing to fully down the list, and then you will go. Fictional character. Raja from Aladdin the Tiger.
Oh, so you're going? You're not doing a random letter
for each. No.
This is one. I thought we were getting a random letter for each one. I was like, okay, this
is probably best why I go first.
Okay.
So Raja. Movie starts with an R. I'm gonna come back to that in a moment. Book. Ooh, gosh, this is harder than I thought.
This is very hard.
I picked tough categories. Book. I've got a wall of movies in front of me that I'm like scoping out right now. This could be a terrible fail, people. Book that starts with an R. I know there are tons, and you guys are probably screaming them at me. I'm trying to think of kids' books too. Nope, I can't say that one. I'll come back to it again. Song. It starts with an R. You can help anytime.
I'm like drawing a blank. Just because we're under the gun here, I'm like drawing a blank right now.
Song that starts with the letter R. Respect. There we go.
I was about to say Rohibia. What is it?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, for some reason, like I thought
we're gonna go with respect. It does have an R, but it's the second word. Musician that starts with an R. A song could have been Red too by Taylor Swift. I just thought about that. Musician. Is there a Rick Springsteen?
Rick James.
There we go.
Rick James.
Thank you for the help.
I contributed a little bit to this.
Actor.
Robert De Niro.
Oh, Robert De Niro, you said? Or Robert Downey Jr., or I was going to say Robert Redford.
Yes.
Did I go with fictional character? Yeah, I did say fictional character. Movie, though. Is red
Red Dawn.
yeah, red. And a book. Man, I'm blanking on the book.
We got a wall of books right behind us too to not be able
cheat. Nope, nothing's popping out.
Nothing's
popping out. Nope. So I got a handful of them. Oh goodness.
All right.
Let's get Kevin's letter.
Let's see what I can do here.
Generate random letter. O.
Oh, okay.
So author. I have one.
Let me grab the phone here. So
yeah, go for it. I have one.
Now I'm now I'm calling it in right now, trying to see if there is a.
Well, for author?
No, I'm just moving along here. I can't think of any authors off the top of my head with an O.
Oscar Wilde.
That's a really good one. Fictional characters with an O. Gosh, I don't know what it is about these games where just putting me on the spot for it makes it
that much harder.
Yes, that much more difficult. Where I'm like
10 times harder.
Like, why is this so difficult? Because if it was like random trivia or something like that, I could pull it. I could just pull it out.
Fictional character. It starts with an O. Are there any villains or Marvel characters?
That was like
that's where you went.
Of like, I'm like,
What about a movie that starts with an O? Let's come back to the fictional character. Oh, I have a movie. Do you want
I'm all ears.
Isn't there a movie called Omen?
Yep, there is a movie called Omen.
Book. Oh, I have a book too. Dang, I should have gotten is what I'm
Yeah, that's what we're coming to right now.
This is the conclusion we're coming to.
Yeah. Oh, a book that has O.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna know the book as soon as I tell you.
Go for it.
No, you go.
No. I'm trying to think again. Like right now, my mind is like so blank.
It's been a long day, folks.
Yeah, my mental acuity right now is like at an all-time low.
One thing.
Oh, that is a very good one.
Song that starts with an O. Song is hard because oftentimes I don't know the name of songs, but I know the lyrics of songs.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it challenging.
Actor, actress is Oscar Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
Musician. Oh.
Musician that starts with the letter O. You could say a band as well if you know a band.
I'm sure there's bazillions of bands with O or something in their name.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, I cannot think of anything. A song, Ophelia.
Oh yeah,
Ophelia.
That's right. Yes.
I think that's by Young the Giant.
I think. Is it Young the Giant?
I think it is.
Why did I want to say Imagine Dragons?
No, definitely not Imagine Dragons. I know that.
You're like, I know that with certainty. I might not know this with certainty, but I know that was. What do you have left? Musician?
Got musician. You got me book. Did we figure out a movie?
Ooh, I don't. Yeah, Omen.
Omen, yes. Fictional character. Did we figure out a fictional character?
Mm-mm.
This is how this is going.
Again, you guys can leave comments down below. Let us know if you can. If you're screaming out a fictional, no, not a fictional. Yeah, fictional character or a musician, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Shall we call it?
Yeah, we can call it.
All right.
Nothing's coming to my mind.
Nothing's coming to my mind either. If you guys want to play, I will put the categories in the description of the show notes that you guys can play. We are going to hop to a quick commercial break before we dive into questions. These are questions for both Kevin and I as well, so it's not just one. It's not just him. Mm-hmm. We're both going to weigh in since we're both two paths in this relationship.
It's not a solo interview here.
No. We'll be right back, guys. And we are back again. It's me and Kevin this week, as Jesse is traveling and has a jam-packed schedule. That was a fun game.
Yeah. Immediately, once the pressure's off, we're on commercial break, and I'm like, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep. His fictional character came to him.
Yep.
That starts with an O. And I'm sure he's going to be sleeping in the middle of the night and pop up and remember another one that would have worked as well.
Yep.
Because that's how it always works.
Yeah.
So we are going to dive into a little bit about us, our relationship, how we are together, how we are as parents. But before we dive into any of that, Jesse and Poe shared the story of how they met, and Jesse wanted us to share the story of how. So how did we meet, Kevin?
Through a dating app, Tinder.
Mm-hmm. It's not a super exciting story.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it had a lot to it.
Yes.
I think you and I were both resistant to Tinder. Like, I was a very late adopter of Tinder.
Absolutely. The only reason I got on Tinder actually is because my roommate at the time, Joe, was like, Ginger, just get on Tinder. And I reluctantly was like, okay, fine, Joe.
So I was working a crazy construction hours on a very large project at the time, still the largest project in my career. Mm-hmm. And we were working, like, again, a light day was, like, again, 12 hours. And this was...
It was a light day. It was like 16-hour days were common.
Yeah, and it was a 6-day-a-week minimum type deal. And I hit this point where I was not necessarily like super satisfied with my situation, so I was like, all right, I've got to change the situation. So I started getting on Tinder and going on dates, and then luckily I swiped right. Is it swiped right? Like, that's how long it's been. Like, I don't know if it's right or left anymore.
I think we swiped right.
Yeah. Swiped right, got connected with you, and then we had our first date at Jim and Nick's up in, like, the Duluth area. And it was a wonderful date, and I feel like we hit it off from there, which led to a string of dates in, like, the Atlanta area. And we still have some places that we've got to revisit down in, like, the Ponce area of Atlanta. For sure.
We went to this really cool, on our second date, I think it was our second date, we went to this really cool bar that was like a comic book.
It was like a comic book, like almost library, like little like deal.
And they had all of these like, books, figurines, like a comic nerd would. I don't mean that as any sort of like negative. I just mean like anybody that is into comics or any sort of science fiction, anything in that realm would love this place. It was a pretty cool place.
Wasn't it called the library or something like that?
Either that or like the bookshop.
That might have been it. Like, I can't remember offhand. Like,
I think it was called the bookshop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was working retail at the time down in one of the main malls in Atlanta, and was also working not 16-hour days, but long days and a crazy schedule.
Very like that was when I got my first foray into like retail hell.
Yeah, the life of a retail employee.
Yes, where it's like open, close, open, close, open, close, all those good times. Because my schedule was very regimented, and I would be waiting up at night for her to get home, or waking up really early with her potentially.
Yes. So we met on Tinder. I'm very glad that I did swipe right. Thinking back to it, not that I almost didn't, but they're like, I mean, if you've been on dating apps, you're like,
there's always a little bit of a possibility of a
there's always a little pause, yeah. And I'm very glad that I didn't. Thank you, Joe, for pushing me to get on Tinder and start dating, because I was freshly divorced. I was like, when I first got on the dating app on Tinder, I was like 6 months post-divorce. So I wasn't necessarily looking for dating. And then I think we met probably like 4 months later.
So. That sounds similar. Like, again, I didn't have the app for long. I guess it's more unique just that we met on the app these days.
Yeah. I think people are surprised because I think they're more considered like hookup apps right now. Though we do know a good bit of people that have had, I think, in all like successful relationships that are either committed relationships or married, like just long-term relationships. And I think it all just depends on what you're looking for and what you go into it and how you communicate.
Yep. I would agree with all that.
Is there a moment where you first thought, I could do life with this person? Where you first considered, you're like, yeah, I could see that.
So I don't know how long it's been so long that I don't remember how long into the relationship it was, but it was at a point where she was comfortable enough asking this heathen to go with her up to her to some of her good friends in Charlotte, North Carolina, in that neck of the woods.
We're going to Annie, and something for Annie and Adam, or just Annie. It might have been Annie's graduate, something in, but yeah.
I think it was the graduation.
It might have been.
But so we go on a little journey up that way. Had a wonderful time up there. That was the time when we stayed at, I think that was my first Airbnb too experience. We stayed in that townhome up in like Davison over there. Again, wonderful experience, wonderful host. We had like a great eating and everything. And then when we came back, we were just talking about kind of what we want out of life, and a lot of it, like we got into the Atlanta, or I'd say into the metro area again, and we were having a conversation, and we were just talking about generalized, like almost like philosophy, I guess you could say, about like what we wanted in that regard. And that was where it was like you were so radically different from everything before you that it was like, yes, that, and can I get seconds of that, and that as much as I can like get of that.
Yeah,
it was like a very like beautiful moment where she was talking about like how she wanted to continue to grow, which again was very very unique from what I had gone on a string of dates.
Just from your previous dating experiences. Yes. Yeah, sure. And I don't know if like, I think the fact that I had already been married at this point, like I feel like once you go through either a marriage or a long-term committed relationship, you learn a lot of what didn't work. And so it gives you a better frame of reference for what you are looking for going forward. And yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I definitely wanted somebody that was of a growth mindset, that had ambition, that was not stuck or stagnant. And I think that's been a huge thing in our relationship. For me, it was kind of it was in part that it was a culmination of things. Another big indicator or moment for me when I thought, oh yeah, I could definitely do again be committed with this person was we just went through a string of, I don't want to call it a string of unfortunate events because they weren't unfortunate. They were just challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So young and so like early in our relationship, and just the way that we handled each other and the way that we handled the situations and the way that he was with me were huge indicators of like, oh, okay. Like I can see how this person is in challenging situations and when things get tough. And I remember thinking, okay, I could do life, I think, with this person, or I could at least see if I want to do life and continue seeing if I wanted to do life with this person. And I mean, here we are almost 8 years later. What is there something that you value most in our relationship, or what do you value in our relationship?
Gosh, pinning it down to one thing is challenging. I would continue. I guess I would stick on the topic of just like the growth mentality. We've always been very good about. I haven't seen friends like there's. I guess I just use the example that I haven't seen certain friends in years, and I probably imagine I'm vastly different from how I was when they last saw me.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, well, yeah, even just from when we first started dating to now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like in that regard, I think I just keep with that theme of like growth. Like we definitely have never been a couple that had been like stuck in our ways or anything. No.
Or even if we do go through seasons where, because I don't want to paint the picture that we always are like, do you know what I mean? Meaning that we aren't always like, how are you growing? How are you growing? How are you doing better? But like there are moments where we kind of have this stability, but we always, if there's a shift that one of us needs to make or that the relationship needs to make, be that in between you and I, in between like work standpoint, in between parenting standpoint.
Yes. And just to add context, this stuff has developed over, multiple years. So it's not something that like goes on overnight, but it's easy to say that you've been growing when you sit there and think about where you were at the beginning of the relationship, or like when you have some sort of focal point to think about, and you have that as like a frame of reference, and you're like, wow, I've come a long way since then.
Yeah. And so for me, I think the thing that I value most in our relationship, and the thing that we've only continued to get better at, is right, and it's along the same lines of this growth mindset, but is the communication, the ease of communication that you and I have in terms of like,
I was gonna say that. I was gonna say that was like they're like right there, 1
yes,
and 2.
Yes. Because we've always, not only do we communicate and talk about things that are challenging and the challenges that arise in our relationship or the struggles that we face, but we also are continually communicating about where are we going with our relationship, like what are our goals, what's the life that we want to build. Like you're talking to me about your goals and what's going on with work, I'm talking to you about my own ambitions. Like I remember, even Good Story Life, right, when Good Story Life came about, he and we sat down and we had conversations about that. The ease of not having to worry about how he's going to respond to something positive or negative, or potentially perceived as negative, has always been something that I value. And even if there are, I think because again, we both have this growth mindset of like continually trying to not only be better for ourselves, but be better in our relationship as well, that we're just always open to listening to, not just hearing, but listening to what the other has to say.
Yeah, because again, just back to the word you use, where it's like we've had to make shifts, to when there's just things that where we've maybe not a challenge, but one person might have grown and their needs are different than maybe the original, like at the start of the relationship, etc.
For sure. Is there any this I feel like could go along the same lines. So I'm trying to think of how to rephrase this, because knocking around the camera. Gosh, Ricky.
I know.
Is there anything that you and I do in our relationship that is unique? Or maybe not everybody does. I have something very specific in mind. I'm going to see if you bring it up.
We
have a ritual.
We have a little bit of a ritual. I guess it's like, to me, it's like it's a two-part because it's evolved a little bit.
It has evolved, yes.
So
how did it initially come about?
Okay, so if we're talking about the same thing here, which I think we are, big reveal now. We wake up early in the morning to spend time with each other on the front end of the day. And that came about through, I think, through podcasts that I listened to, Tim Ferriss specifically, talking about, like, I guess some of his relationships with his significant others, or, and I say significant others because I don't quite keep up with him to that level to know.
Yeah.
But then Girlfriends of Tim Ferriss was talking about how they put themselves kind of at the beginning of the day, because what they found was if they put themselves at the end of the day, there's a high likelihood that they were going to be tired or just mentally exhausted and wouldn't be giving each other the time and attention that I would say a relationship needs.
Yes.
And so we started there, and I don't know if it was like I think it might have been like through an interview he had with Hugh Jackman, and Hugh Jackman had developed it from like Patrick Stewart. So,
and the way that he brought it up was, he's like, hey, I listened to this podcast. I think there's some stuff that you might like in it. Why don't you go ahead and give it a listen? And so I did. And I said, oh, I really loved that. I love that they do that. He's like, I thought you would. And thus was born the Kevin and Ginger getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, because one of the things that we realized as parents, to his point, was that after a long day of parenting, of working, of just the load of motherhood and life, to his point, you don't have a huge bandwidth mentally and emotionally to prioritize each other and your relationship, your focal relationship. So we made the choice to prioritize it and put it at the beginning of the day. And we started getting up around 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'd spend 30 minutes to an hour together, just checking in, chit-chatting. And it's evolved, to your point, now.
And now I'd almost say that we've hit like the 2.0 phase of it.
And I will also add, though, that we go through periods where we like don't do this and we prioritize sleep and other things, but we always come back to it. We are back to it.
So just like with everything in the chaos of life, sometimes you cannot always, sometimes you're not always able to hold to the routine. And just to Ginger's point, whether it's our daughter who typically has the tendency to not sleep as well as our son.
Sometimes, yes.
If one of the kids wake up, if we're like up in the middle of the night trying to help get them back to sleep, it can kind of throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into our getting up at 5 a.m.
Yes. But we always come back to it.
Yes.
Right
now we are re-engaged in the practice, and I would say the 2.0 of it was, and again, I don't know how I framed this, but again,
all of these things have come from him too. Like
same podcast, same person, Tim Ferriss, following him. And again, like when I was driving into work, there's a lot of downtime. You have like a lot of like time when you're making these commutes to be like educating yourselves to some degree. You're listening to Joe Rogan or listening to whoever you like to listen to in the morning. And when I'd be listening to him, he brought up how him and his girlfriend, again at the time, would do like a relationship check-in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, again, kind of like a once a week thing. And we started doing it on Mondays,
mm-hmm.
where it's just like, was there anything, kind of just like, we haven't gotten as disciplined with it where we like developed a like consistent questions, I would say. Like we ask questions.
I did that today.
You did?
Yeah. So the consistent question for us has been what's worked in the past week, what didn't work, or was there any way that I could have improved? And we do this for each of us.
Yes. And that was his like initial questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he had other questions that he asked. But again, it just didn't make pen to paper. So
mm-hmm.
it has been a little bit impromptu in that respect.
I did put together a list of questions today after doing some research online. If you want, I'm happy to share those with whoever wants. Just let us know in the comments below, either on Facebook or on YouTube, and I can get that to you. But I did find a list. It does contain and does have the same question that the first question that we asked, and then more pointed questions as well. So I'm excited to start that. But we've been doing a version of that. And the goal, I will add, because I've also done some looking into like relationship check-ins. The goal is never to get through all, or it's not that it's never, but the object of the point of it isn't to get through all of the questions, but to set a timer and get through what you can get through. Some weeks you might get through all of them. Some weeks you might just get through one. I feel like that's the barometer for how well you're doing with that. If it's not something you decide to adopt, is not how far do you get through, but how does the end of the conversation feel?
Like most things that you and I have been talking about lately, most things that I've come to is more process driven and less like outcome or results driven.
Yes, we've been talking about that a lot. Another topic for another day.
Yes.
A question that Jesse had for us was, what is the most rewarding part of being parents?
You get a lot of fulfillment from your children, and like while it can be challenging and frustrating, and like you'll hear it's easier for the human mind to associate with all the more challenging aspects of parenthood. But at the same time, like seeing the smiles on their face, seeing the little personalities that develop, being goofy with them, you can derive a lot of, like, again, if you can derive a lot of fulfillment from that. I do.
Yeah. And I think that's fulfilling is more accurate than rewarding. I would say as a word, because you and I talked about this question before we hopped on here.
Yeah.
And for me, the most rewarding part, as I think in that same vein, is just, seeing the people that they're developing into, and also seeing just like the shifts from how like I was as a child, and seeing, because that's one of the things that I was always very like an old soul. I was always very mature for my age. And that's one of those things that I would like, if I could go back in time, just allowing myself to be a little bit more of a kid, and seeing my kids get to be kids and enjoy childhood and just have fun, I think has been super rewarding for me. And then seeing how the things that we are trying to teach them about helping them learn how to emotionally regulate themselves, and seeing the progress that we've made in those scenarios is also really fulfilling and rewarding for me as well.
Yes. I definitely think also, I guess, to even like, you brought up something that kind of came to my mind while you were speaking about it. You can, not that, and I'm going to go ahead and caveat this, if my mother or father or stepfather or anybody in my family is watching, or my sisters, or again,
Just anybody,
anybody that's that helped raise me. You kind of get to be the parent that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not in a negative context, but you get to be the parent that you wanted for your children. And I think that, particularly, like, I can definitely say with my mother in mind, like, my mother definitely, like, went, like, one of the things that I could say about my mother is she went out of her way to, to really, I would say, give me a better childhood than probably herself.
Mm-hmm. And so you try to do the same thing
yes, and
as
it's like that's been kind of passed on to the next generation.
For sure. What has been the most unexpected thing that I'm not sure quite how to phrase this question, but the question that I'm thinking of is like, what has been, or what have you found to be the most like unexpected thing about parenting, or what did you not expect maybe going into parenting that you figured out along the way?
I think we talked about this one as well ahead of time, did we?
I feel like we did, but I don't know. Do you want me to share my answer first?
No, I'll go because I think we talked about this one. Like, for me, one of the more unexpected things was, like, again, kind of to the point earlier. I'm a bit ambitious. We're both ambitious. Like, taking a step back, knowing what I know now, where I'm like, oh, I can see how people who, like, maybe don't take, like, who, I'm not going to say just take a career pause and not, like, just not trying to go to the next level and just, like, try to get good at something to where they're comfortable at it and developing a sense of work-life balance because they've mastered whatever it is at their position.
Look, the motherhood pause is a real thing. Like, when you become a mom, right? And I say mom, not that it doesn't happen for dad or can't happen for dad, but mom is generally the default parent. She's the primary caregiver. So everything for mom kind of gets put on pause for, however long or potentially indefinitely, it all depends on how all of that affects you. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. And to kind of bring it full circle, it was like the season of life that you're in. If you're at the season of life where, as a parent, you want to really, like, embrace being able to be around, like, be at the soccer games, be at the baseball games, be at the football games, all those sort of things, you might, think about where you are, and then when your children will be on the other end of the spectrum, where maybe not to be mean to your children, but they might just care a little bit less about mom and dad at that point. So,
you're not the superstars.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, that's something unexpected to think about because, again, I've been on this, like, meteoric rise, I guess, for somewhat from a career perspective, which is, the more you go, the higher you go, the more demanding it becomes, the higher expectations, all the different things that come with, like, going up a corporate ladder, the hours you work.
Yeah. So in some cases, like, the decision of whether or not to put a pause on your growth and decide whether or not you want to focus on the family, from your standpoint.
Yes. And then, and this is more just probably because I'm going through it right now. The sleep aspect. The sleep aspect. I mean, like, certain things, like, your sleep is going to be changed just because that'll probably be like the plethora of advice that you will get when I feel like is going to be like, you're never going to sleep, for those first handful of years.
I feel like you slept.
I mean, I will say that during the Grayson era, I slept a lot better than I will say when we got Grayson and Clara era.
Grayson was a good sleeper. But I mean, as mom,
I don't like
particularly because I breastfed.
Yes, I was about to say.
Yeah,
I was
that's the only reason.
It was never like,
and our kids would not take a bottle.
Yes,
we could do nothing.
No,
but both of them were interested in bottles as soon as they stopped breastfeeding. Didn't no longer needed to breastfeed. Yeah. I don't feel any type of way about that at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
For me, the part that I don't think I realized, and the most unexpected piece for me, and I don't know that this has been so much your journey, but it's certainly been my journey, has been the opportunity to grow and heal and really examine my own wounds and triggers and patterns of behavior, because kids will trigger anything and everything. And sometimes those triggers cause you to behave or act in a way that's contradictory to how you want to be as a parent or how you would like to be as a parent. And so for me, I have spent a tremendous amount of time really dissecting and understanding the root cause of those, those triggers, those feelings that it stirs in me, and have made tremendous headway in kind of reprogramming and reparenting myself as well, and being able to be more of the mom that I've wanted to be. But that was something that I didn't expect. Also, just the sheer amount of emotional space that you have to hold for your children. That tantrums are to be expected, but I don't think there's no way that you can know and anticipate what it's actually going to be like until you are a parent and you're in it. And that was also, I think, unexpected, and how mentally and emotionally and physically draining and taxing that could be.
Yes, because it's like if you go down the path that we have went down, some of the easier things to do in a lot of instances, especially when you're frustrated or you're tired or you're whatever it might be, they can really test you. Not with the intention of testing
yes, and it's not yes,
but they can test you.
They just trigger you. Trigger you is a better word than testing.
Trigger, at the end of the day, your patience level, your frustration levels, all of those things, controlling your emotions and sticking to your principles or your guns about how you want to be as a parent can get challenged. That identity can get challenged because of just the sheer raw emotion that kids can experience over anything and almost everything.
Anything and everything. It's intense. That's been the most unexpected part for me. More unanticipated part. Now, if you have been around Good Story Live for any length of time, you know that we always ask a specific question of all of the creatives that we have on the show, all of our guests, and that has to do around advice. So I'm going to ask you two pieces of advice. First, what's one piece of advice that you would give, or if you could, to other couples or people in relationships? And then for what's one piece of advice you would give to parents or people considering having kids? We'll start with relationships since that's where we started. Piece of advice for relationships.
Open-minded, maybe not open, I don't know if that's the right words, but I guess you look at the older generations, and you don't, again, all due respect to them, they we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and
sure,
in respect to them, we wouldn't be necessarily where we are without them. But at the same time, there's so many different individuals over the course of my life that I can just and I'm not going to name anybody by name, but it's just this is the way I am. And
it ties into what I'm going to say too.
and that's where, again, one of the biggest things for you and I that I will always say has been a very valuable thing to both you and I has been like, I've never been like, this is my line in the sand on this. And, we've always been open and, again, like willing to make a shift to a different level or to something else to where we both feel comfortable with where we're at. And that's what I would say about relationships.
Yeah. So for me, I would say my one piece of advice for anybody in a relationship or any sort of partnership is to never stop putting forth the effort in your relationship. I don't know if I read this, if I watched this, if I heard this, but when you're first in a relationship or when you're first dating, like oftentimes you'll do things, right? And you'll put forth great amounts of effort to show an interest in the person that you're courting, we'll say, right? Whether that's if they're into painting, as an example, it's like you will ask about that. You'll show an interest in that. You might not love it, but you put forth effort, and vice versa. It's like if Kevin liked golf, which he hates golf, by the way, but if he did like golf, right, in the beginning, I would make an effort to do things with him based around his interests, right? And for whatever reason, as you get into relationships and you go through time, you stop putting forth the effort that you potentially would put in a new relationship. Or if your relationship ended, you would put forth effort in a new relationship. So if you value the relationships that you have and you want to build something that I feel like, you want to continue to grow, I think continually putting in the effort and holding each other accountable to putting in that effort.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. I think that that's very valid. I would say just using even you and me, for example. I used to hate walking. Hate it.
I could not get this.
Was very objective about the walk. Well, what are we going on the walk for?
Why? Yeah, why are we going for a walk?
What are we trying to do? What are we trying to do when we go on this walk? It's like, I didn't have the appreciation for what a walk, how it can clear your mind, how it can put you in a better mood,
how it's just a time to connect.
Yes, spending time with your significant other. I just didn't really appreciate it that much, and now with age, we go on walks regularly now.
Yeah, almost daily.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, okay. And one piece of advice that you would give to parents or people considering having children.
Okay. That one piece of advice to considering.
Yeah, people that are new parents or considering. It's not to sway you to have kids or dissuade you, but what's one piece of advice that you would give Kevin in fresh nug days? Or
patience.
Yeah.
Patience
with what?
Again, kind of just because it's rewarding, it's fulfilling, the whole process of watching Grayson and Clara and interacting with them. Even just today, I was getting to play with them a little bit, and it's always nice to get to play with them, and the smiles and all the different things that you get to experience with your children. And but at the same time, again, there's all these aspects that can be extremely challenging.
Sure.
And you can easily, if you think about it, you can, if you're sleep deprived, if you're, if you went to work, or if you had a day where you had to exhaust, from a motherhood standpoint, if you're having to constantly make decisions all day, and you can easily beat up on yourself, too beat up, like again, mentally beat up on the children or whatever, and maybe not be like in integrity with like how you're wanting to be as a parent. It's very easy. And sometimes again, like I'm not neither of us are perfect. We've had bad days. And in that respect, it's like having patience, having grace with yourself.
Yes.
And that's kind of the I don't know if that was very specific. I don't know if that was specific enough. Like if we're looking for something tactical, but
no, I don't necessarily. It doesn't have to be tactical. It's just what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself, or again, somebody considering or getting ready to embark on the journey of parenthood. I think for me, I think there are a couple of pieces of advice that I would give. One is, as mom, don't stop and don't forget to prioritize yourself in the journey of motherhood. Need to top off.
Yep.
Don't forget to prioritize yourself. It is insanely easy to neglect yourself as mom or dad, but insanely easy to neglect yourself as mom. And it is hard to show up for the people that you want to show up for in life, like your kids or your significant other, if you don't prioritize yourself. And you can't wait for somebody else to prioritize you. You have to prioritize you. Like you can't rely, like I can't rely on Kevin to prioritize me. He can help me prioritize me, but I can't rely on him to prioritize me. I have to do that.
There's just cause due to just the there's no way that I'm going to be able to read your mind and know when you might have had like a really tough day or you need some time like off. And that has also come along with the communication of you and I, where I think there's a great cartoon Bluey where Chili needs the 20 minutes. I need 20 minutes.
That's a great episode. Like, if you haven't seen it and you're a parent, go watch that one.
Yes, that is great. A recommended show.
Recommended episode.
Like when your kids can enjoy entertainment. Recommended Ginger and Kevin approved show there. And there's a lot of great lessons in that show. And again, one of those is like being mom is, is its own thing. Again, you're raising two little human beings that there's no like super manual of like how to be mom or dad, but it's like mom is again always on.
Yeah. And if your dad go watch the episode first of all, but also like if she needs 20 minutes, you do whatever you need to do to give her 20 minutes or whatever the time frame is. The other thing that I would say, and the other piece of advice is, again, as mom or as parents in general, is to let go of your expectations for how things should be, how things could be, how you want. Like when you release the expectations, you can find a ton more joy in motherhood and being parents.
That's like, I'm one of those people, as we talk through things, my brain thinks of things that I would say to people. I would definitely be like cognizant that unless you are in close proximity in age, who's with like a family member who's gone through it before you, it's like, again, you're gonna hit this point where you're like I feel like we had a day when we were like, what all do we need? And we're like, we're making calls to my sister and just various things, because it's like, again, there's no
manual, there's no book that tells you. I mean like there are books, so clearly like it's a big business.
There's a whole industry around.
There's a whole industry, yes.
But even saying that, it's like sometimes that first time parent isn't like, I still to this day have not read any, I've read articles about raising kids and things to do and different things like that, but I've never read like a full-fledged book around raising children.
Yeah, I have.
I know you have, and
But they still don't tell you everything that you need.
And exactly. And it's like, it doesn't like...
And you don't need as much as you think you need.
No, you don't. But at the same time, it's like, at the end of any of those books, I don't think that it comes and says, hey,
here's this checklist for
yes,
you
get this,
of everything that you need.
Yes, get all these things. These are the bare essentials that you will need. Like some of the more obvious things that you're gonna need diapers. Like we knew that, but there was just like, what type of like seats and play toys and things like that. Like, because there's some things that can entertain the kids. They can entertain a kid, an infant. Or maybe not entertain, but you can kind of
and maybe the advice that we're trying to give with this piece is like, find somebody that is just ahead of you in the journey, not somebody that is like years or so out of the stage that you're going into. I think is ultimately what
exactly. So it's again, if you don't have any close siblings or relatives or anybody that's like a little bit ahead of you, it's probably good to find a community or somebody that is again right there. Just like anything, kind of where they tell you to like follow, just somebody who's just doing a few moves ahead of you.
Yes.
And that way you can have a good baseline of, hey, what do I need? Do I need white noise machines? We never knew about white noise machines. And that was like something where like the previous generation that we were talking to, I don't think they knew about white noise machines.
No.
But that was like a thing that like...
We still use white noise.
Yes, we still use...
And our kids are 2 and 4.
Yes,
we still
exactly.
Use white noise.
So again, there's things like that. I just like... I'd recommend like, again, getting in the communities. We're
time.
Okay.
We got to wrap this up.
Okay.
We got to wrap this up. I'm sorry to cut him off, but we got to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Jesse, I hope we answered some of your questions. I will link, if you guys want to see, like I said, some of the things that we talked about night in. If anybody is interested, you could just get on YouTube and look for Adulting Done Right and you will find it. But I will link to those below if you guys are interested. I will link to the relationship check-in questions that we do and that we are supposed to be starting doing this week. But the main one that we have been asking. If you're interested in any of the podcast episodes that Kevin mentioned, I'm happy to link those as well. Just let me know in the comments below. But overall, thank you so much. Hopefully we held up the mantle while Jesse is doing whatever Jesse needs to do.
Next
I'm gonna rag on him some more for missing.
Next time we'll I've got movie credential background to some degree to...
Oh yeah, we didn't even touch on that.
Yes.
Anyway.
Part 2.
Yes.
We'll talk about Screen Gems Part 2.
But it is late. Thank you for joining us for this after hours edition of Good Story Live, and we will see you next week. And I will figure out who we're going to talk to next week. But we've got somebody. If not, it'll meet me and Jesse. Not me and Kevin.
Maybe I'll be back as a guest next time.
You never know.
Guest.
Have a good day, folks. We'll see you next time on Good Story Live.
Thank you.